Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have everyone joining on in. As people start entering the room, please feel free to dive into our interactive word cloud. Go ahead and scan the QR and start contributing some words about what the word mentor means to you. What excellent words here. This is getting me really excited for today's panel. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. I'm going to unshare this screen, but don't stop adding some words. We can always come back to this at the end. So before we kick off today's panel, I'm going to start with a brief introduction on a few key items, being able to talk through some exciting details. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to some. We are so excited to welcome you here today to our panel on building your bench and owning your career. Thank you so much for joining today. We are grateful to have each of you on the line and even so excited to hear from our amazing panelists today. I'm Amanda Sabia, and I will be your host, walking you through each of the different factors about relativity, but also talking a little bit about why we chose the theme for today's panel. I'm a senior pre-sales engineer here with Relativity, and I'm from Boston. So let's kick things off. Talking a little bit about relativity and our background. I know we have some folks on the line who might not be familiar with relativity and the industry itself. So relativity, we create intuitive software that helps law firms, government agencies, financial institutions, and other major corporations quickly find the truth in their data. We were founded in 2001. We are an international organization with over 1,200 employees, 300,000 enabled platform users, which some of you might be on the line. We are available in 49 countries, and we have over 100 developer partners. We exist largely for the concept of organizing data, discovering the truth, and acting on it. So the IDB community here at Relativity is an incredible part of what we do. It's a tremendous focus. So here's a little bit more about what IDB means for our community. We believe when inclusion, diversity, and belonging come together, our team around the world can do simply amazing things to build a brighter future. And we need all three to truly shine. Oops, sorry about that. We'll kick off today's conversation by just touching a little bit about our sponsor and group, which is RelWoW. The RelWoW mission is really focused on creating a relativity where nobody is constrained by gender norms. The mission is to build a brave space to inspire women, engage our allies, and provide thought leadership in ways that benefit Relativians, the customers we serve, and the communities we reside in. In 2020, RelWoW launched the first round of Mentorship Circles with 40 Relativians in 5 circles. Mentorship Circles for us are a form of peer-to-peer mentoring. We hope that circle members leave that program feeling that they've developed new or deepened existing relationships and have identified and clarified opportunities to grow their careers through a process that encourages self-directed career management. And finally, in honor of Women's History Month, we have empowered each of our members to choose to challenge your relativity. We can all choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality, and we can all choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all help to create an inclusive world. From challenge comes change, so let's all choose to challenge. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the concept of building your bench. Before we do that, I'd love to share a little bit about the inspiration for today's title. So when the winning basket swishes or the soccer ball finds its way into the back of the net, the team's bench is on their feet, cheering, supportive, excited, so excited to be there. And the team is hoisting each other up, chanting and cheering. That team is also where, when that win doesn't pan out, that team is the first one to come together to support each other. We should all seek to develop a bench like that, a bench of individuals that are there to support growth, support your growth, allow you to thrive, and help you to reach your goals. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into that concept of building your bench. Before we do, I'll call attention to 3 key parties that really we think about within your bench. We have your coach who guides and coaches you. We have your sponsor who might be an advocate in your organization or perhaps an industry leader. And then finally, last but not least, we have that mentor. And that will be really a big focus of today's conversation. We'll do a deep dive to fully understand that the role that a mentor can play in your own career. And we'll hear from our remarkable panelists about their own experience in this space. So without further ado, let's kick this panel off. During the panel, please feel free to use the Q&A function, to pass along any questions. We'll be running through the panel and then save plenty of time for live Q&A right there at the end. I am so honored, thankful, appreciative, grateful to introduce Relativity's own Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary, Karen Klein. Karen, please take it away.
All right, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate it very much. So I'm really honored today to host this panel with Amanda and to be able to moderate this panel of amazing women that have joined us today. Each of them come from some different backgrounds and how they got to their careers, much of which may have either involved great mentoring or they may be very involved in mentoring today. And we'll get into a little bit more of that. But first, I'd like to start with a really basic introduction of each of them. And rather than my reading each of their backgrounds, I'd love to hear directly from our panelists a little bit about who you are, what you do in your career journey. So we will start with Emily Messer, who is a director of content here at Relativity.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everybody. So the early part of my career journey is really delightfully random because I was working so many different jobs to support myself while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, and then eventually also while I was going through some schooling. And that was all over the place. At one point, I was a telemarketer. I was a personal care assistant for adults with disabilities. I edited PhD dissertations. I delivered mail for the post office, just to name a few. But then right out of my undergrad, I actually started off teaching high school English. And to be honest, teaching was never my passion. I had seen a lot of my friends and my peers, my brother, really struggle to find some work coming out of school, and I was nervous. And teaching felt safe. It felt like something that I knew I could do, and it had such a prescribed path on how to follow and how to get there. So I started teaching, and then about my first year in, I had a big aha moment. The town that I had taught in had their major employer closed down, and it really decimated that community. And the kids in my classes had so much going on in their lives. They didn't care at all about the papers I was assigning to them. And it made me realize that these kids needed a teacher who was really invested and really cared and would fight for them. And it wasn't me, because I had never really wanted to be there in the first place. So I quit. And then throw in some more random jobs. And then I went back into grad school and I got my master's in instructional design, because the gift that teaching did give me was that I knew I could help people learn. And instructional design really just captivated me. It let me write, it taught me multimedia skills that pushed me creatively, and it gave me a perspective that I could work anywhere because everybody has to learn. So I started off in different instructional design roles, and that sort of rose into leading design teams, leading other learning functions, leading broader aspects of talent, like talent development, talent management. And of course, through all of this time period, mentorship was a huge piece of navigating that journey. But then about 5 years ago, I decided to make a change. I saw that I was getting more and more internal, more and more almost HR focused, where I wanted to be more of a community, and I wanted to push myself into understanding, can I do what I think I know how to do in an entirely different context? So I came to Relativity, and let me tell you, a growing software company is completely different than a 20,000 person, 100-year-old company that I was at previously. So I've been here at Relativity for about 5 years now. I'm the director of customer content, and I lead the teams here that educate our community about our product. Whether you're learning it for the first time, or if you need help right in real time to solve a problem, or if you want to use it to build your career, that's what we do, and that's how we help our communities learn. So that's me.
All right. Thank you very much, Emily. Turning it over to Molly Beck. We have two Mollys today, so I'll refer to Molly Beck as Molly B. So Molly is the author of a business advice book called Reach Out. She's also the CEO of Messy.fm, which is a podcasting company. So Molly, give us a bit of an introduction to you.
Sure. So happy to be here. So I would be Molly B. I love being on panels with other Mollys. I don't think I ever have been, so this is very exciting. Okay, let's do a career journey. Sail back with me in time to 2012. Honey Badger is all over YouTube. LMFAO is all over the radio. And then there's me. I had moved to New York City 2 years prior out of an undergraduate degree in Boston at Northeastern. I majored in finance. And I'd spent about 2 years working at a startup. I was feeling very sad and very stuck in my career, in my life, because I think your career and your life are very intertwined. Thought I would move to New York, have all these friends, have this great job, maybe be going to conferences. None of that was happening. And then I had an experience that really sort of redirected the course of my life. I went to a friend's birthday party. Do you remember those? And at this friend's birthday party, I got stuck in a conversation with someone that I had never met prior and never met again. But what we talked about that night was transformational. This person worked in a different industry than I did, but everything they were saying was like catnip to me. They were talking about how their boss had just sent them on some sort of cross-country adventure to pitch new clients. They were talking about a side hustle that they have. We didn't even have the term side hustle back then, but they had a project outside of work they were so excited about. They had a bunch of friends that they came into the party with, and I was there by myself. And as I was talking to this person, I was like struck by the idea that he wasn't necessarily smarter than I was. He was just better connected. So I made the pledge that if the secret to life was just knowing more people, every morning I was going to send an email to, at the time I thought it would be only strangers. It's evolved now to be the edge of my network, friends of friends, old acquaintances, every single morning, and see how that has changed my life. And now we are 9 years later. I've sent an email every morning at 9:15 to someone on the edge of my network, and it has changed my life. I no longer work at that stuck startup job. I was able to get a better job at Hearst, which then I leveraged into a better job at Venmo. Then I moved over to Forbes running podcasting, and then eventually started my own entrepreneurial venture, Messy FM. We're venture backed. We service the Fortune 100, and we're very excited about the audio software space. Also went back to school at night, got my master's in marketing, and most relevant to this conversation, I was able to meet mentors. I was able to meet people that were engaging in my life, helping me make both macro level decisions and micro ones. And most excitingly, I became a mentor, and I was able to reach out to people that were a few years behind me or in a different industry that I thought I could maybe be helpful with them and build this real community around myself. And that is where I'm at today. I'm so excited for this panel. I think mentorship is the number one thing that's driven my career forward, and I can't wait to have this discussion.
Great. Thank you, Molly. So our next Molly is Molly Matthias, and Molly M is a manager of mentoring and inclusion at Chicago Innovation. So this is her life's work, at least her current life's work. So Molly, I'll let you do an introduction.
Thank you so much, Karen. It is so great to be here with you all, and it's always great to be with another Molly. I agree, it doesn't happen often enough. So when looking back at my career history, it didn't become clear to me till recently that I've been able to get where I'm at today because of the influence of mentors, both informal and formal, and sponsors. I graduated from Loyola University Chicago, so I'm very pleased at how the men's basketball team is doing right now, advancing. So that's very exciting. But I graduated with a degree in history and sociology. I studied that because I loved it and I wanted to do something I was passionate about if I was going to spend a lot of money in 4 years of my time. But after graduating, I had no clue what to do next. Luckily, I got a great job at a nonprofit doing educational programming, and it was wonderful. I loved it. While I was at that nonprofit, I got a sponsor at that organization encouraged me to apply for another job in development. So I was able to move into development at a nonprofit, something I never thought or saw myself doing or had experience in. And so because of different sponsors and mentors, I've been able to move to different nonprofits and different roles at different nonprofits, to where I'm now working at Chicago Innovation, a 20-year-old nonprofit in Chicago, overseeing 2 of our mentoring programs, one specifically for women and one for co-mentoring for people from 2 different generations. And it's something I'm really passionate about because I saw how impactful mentorship has been in my life. And when you take those informal mentorships and turn them into formal, your whole career could change. And I really credit my past mentors for getting me where I'm at today. Oh, Karen, you're on mute.
Yep, of course. Somebody was going to do it, and it had to be me,
Yes.
right? So, all right. Thank you, Molly. So Namisha Murthy is our last panelist, and Namisha is runs Products by Women, or is the operations and go-to-market there. So I will ask Namisha to do an intro as well.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone. My name is Namisha. By day, I lead product at a social enterprise and work with immigrants and refugees and build products for good. By night, I actually founded this community called Products by Women. To be honest, I'm firstly really honored to be a part of this panel. It's incredible to be here. But I just wanted to share a small story of how I got here. I had my son around 2017, and it's around the same time that I actually moved jobs from product marketing to product management. I come from a non-tech background. So when I actually had my son, I started feeling like there were gaps in my skill sets. And I was actually seeking out for mentorship. And I don't work for a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500 or Relativity where I had access to mentorship. So when I didn't have access to mentorship, what I decided was like, hey, I'm going to see how I can find mentors. It's great that everybody's talking about mentorship now, but even like 2 years ago, it wasn't as accessible as it is today. So I really just put together a small meetup group. I literally begged my coworkers and said, hey, can you just come out for a drink with me, because no one's going to turn up here. And what happened was we had a little over 50 to 60 women who turned up. And then what I just wanted to do is really kind of build a better network for myself, find better opportunities for myself. Even after living here in the US for a little over 10 years, if it's not very evident by now, I'm actually from India. I grew up there. I really didn't have opportunities. So when I didn't have opportunities, I decided to create my own opportunities. And then that little meetup kind of turned into something else. And the next event, we had a little over 100 women and the bar was kind of full. And very early on, we started having speakers from Forbes. We started working with Barclays. We had over 600 RSVPs. It was incredible. And then COVID happened. But when COVID happened, what the interesting thing that we saw was that people started joining us from Amsterdam, from India, from Singapore, from everywhere, all over the world. And now after 1.5 years, we have a little over members from a little over 90 plus countries and 9,000 plus members. And this is a diverse global tech community we're talking about, which is so powerful. And recently we just launched a skill-based mentorship program, which actually, we have a different take of, how we look at mentorship. I mean, traditionally, mentorship is seen as a relationship between somebody who's really really experienced and someone who is perhaps not that experienced. But the way we look at it is that, it could be someone who's just early on in their career, but with incredible design skills. So why can't I kind of jump on a call with them and learn how it's done? Why can't I learn better financial modeling skills with someone who's extremely experienced? We all know we've learned from our early managers on how to probably, be a little bit more organized or be a little bit more something, so take all the good from people. So we are kind of democratizing and making mentorship very accessible, and it's going really well. And I've just announced my latest venture. It's a lifestyle and a wellness organization, which is really focused on ritual-based health and wellness. And outside of that, I occasionally invest in women-led ventures because, I mean, I guess if women like us don't kind of back then who will? So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So Namisha, thank you for that. I don't think I realized that you had a full-time job and then also founded and launched this product. That's amazing. So let's turn to more specifically some of the mentoring questions. So share an experience. I would ask, I'll start with Molly M, but can you share an experience that you've had as either a mentor or mentee?
Yeah, and I'm going to share an experience that wasn't successful because I think we learn most from our failures. So my first mentoring experience was in college. I was connected with a woman who I really admired. At the time, I thought I wanted to work at a university, so she was my mentor. And at the beginning, I was so excited for this opportunity. Unfortunately, I didn't have the right tools in my toolbox to make the most out of this relationship. So I didn't know that I should set up a schedule of meetings, a cadence of talking to her. I didn't come prepared for the meeting. So I would just come and show up and be like, so how's it going today? Without really coming with like what I wanted to talk and work through. So unfortunately, this mentoring experience, I wasn't able to leverage it to its fullest. And, you know, after a couple of years, I looked back on that. I was like, oh, why didn't I take better advantage of that? Like, that's so sad. I reached back out to her. She's now in my network as, you know, an informal mentor, but it really helps me apply better practices for future mentorship. So it was my first mentoring experience. It didn't succeed, but it was a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. You can learn an awful lot from the things that fail because you realize how much more you could have done with it. Namisha, your thoughts on an experience you had as a mentor or mentee that you would share?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in fact, the reason we rolled out skill-based mentorship is because, to be honest, I've learned the most from my peers. And, I remember being in meetings and actually learning so much from, an engineer or in my team or someone else. So I think, that's one area I feel like is often overlooked at a workplace where, you can actually schedule a quick call with your coworker, set aside some time or block some time off. And go prepared with kind of just having some sort of goal saying, hey, can you kind of review this piece for me or explain to me how this is done? And I think that piece is something that I'd really like to share, that I think that there needs to be a little bit more of knowledge exchange at workplaces, or pure mentorship, as we call it, which is very powerful in many ways.
Yeah, great. So I want to follow on with that and ask Molly B. So it sounds like a few of our panelists have had experiences where it was sort of peer-to-peer, where it was more formal, more informal. From your perspective, is a mentor always sort of a personal connection or relationship we gain? Or can you get mentorship through courses or attending events or books? I'd love your thoughts on that.
What a great question. So I think you have to differentiate between, is the question that you need help on, or is it Googleable or non-Googleable? Googleable. When I typed it out, I didn't practice saying it. Can you find the answer on Google or can you not? Because I think that there's a place for both content that's available for everyone to have. And there's also a place in your life for content from someone that knows you really well. It's like asking, should I be on email or should I be on social media? Well, you should be on both, because you should be able to have personal, private relationships and be able to see what other people are doing in the space. I'm thinking about, you should never waste time with a mentor asking a question whose answer you can find on Google. So if your question is, how do I format my resume? I'm in marketing, but I want to move to technology. That's a question that you can get from content freely available on the web. If your question is, my marketing boss thinks I do such a great job that they don't want to recommend me for an internal transfer, well, that's a conversation you need to have with a mentor. It's special and unique to you. So thinking about, is this issue that I'm facing available on Google or not available on Google, can help you think about where is the best place to go for an answer.
That's great. So we've heard a little about, what are the right things for mentorship or how things went well. So I'm going to turn back to Molly M and ask you, talk me through a mentorship meeting that does work, either as a mentor or mentee. Again, how do you ensure then that it's productive? You touched a little on this, but could you elaborate a little for us?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is establishing a clear set of goals. So talking to your mentor and saying, these are the goals that I have for this set time frame. You know, when you have a mentor, there's usually a time reason that you ask for this relationship. So have those clear expectations set from the start. And then I would say coming in with an agenda or set of questions like Molly B just alluded to, you know, questions that you can't just Google or things that you really want insight to talk through. I always, for the Women's Mentoring Co-op at Chicago Innovation, I always tell the mentors to come prepared, the mentees to come prepared, to know what they want to talk about, you know, even if it's just one little instance, but to come with an idea of what they want to discuss. And then my number one key is to set your next meeting before you leave. So know when you're going to talk again, know how you're going to follow up, just so that way you don't leave it at that one meeting, but you can set that cadence.
Emily, anything you would add on that, or maybe something from the mentor side?
I feel like Molly's answer is great. So much I agree with. I think just to add to it a little bit, 100% agree. Understanding your question or your goal or your skill that you're looking to develop is key going into that mentoring relationship. I would advocate really getting strong on that before you even actively solicit your mentor. Because if you have a really good sense of what you're trying to discover, that's going to be supremely helpful in identifying the right person to work with or helping your network help you source that person to work with. And then bring a lot of clarity between mentor and mentee about what you're trying to do. And then similarly, once you've got that down, it's very worthwhile to just spend some time talking through what that question, skill, concept means to each of you. And also, what do you think are the best ways to explore that together? Is it, you know, a series of questions and answers? Are you going to, you know, listen to a podcast together, do some shadowing? I know in the past with some of my mentees, I've leveraged my teaching background and I've created exercises for us to go through. So having a conversation up front about how can we best learn and share about this will make that prep in the planning for what you do together time even more well spent. And then of course, a big +1 to the planning for the next time. Even though the conversations can be so engaging, save some time at the end to make sure you have a next date, that you know what topic you're going to follow up on, you know any tasks you're going to do in between so that you can keep that momentum going.
Great. I think having a quality and productivity of that meeting is really important. Molly, Beck, would you add anything to that?
There is no better way to flatter someone than to take out a notebook and take notes while they write. So bring that notebook, take notes. I've been at meetings where my notes are kind of just like, wow, this is a little bit of a boring meeting, but the other person thinks like I am hanging on their every word. That's what you want. You want the mentor to feel like that they're giving you value, because then they're more likely to give you more value.
It's great. Pivoting a little bit, Namisha, I would ask you, during your own experience as either a mentor or mentee, has there anything that you feel has changed your career directionally, or how you approach it, or your lens at how you look at life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, to be honest, I think I actively kind of, I'm out there and I really carve out time for mentorship as well, mentorship purposes. And to be honest, I think I've learned more being a mentor than being on the other side, to be honest, because I feel like as a mentor, I'm constantly meeting a lot of like start entrepreneurs who are kind of scaling new ideas. And interestingly, a lot of what I take away from those meetings actually changes a lot of things, that the way I do things or the way I scale ideas. And I think that that's been kind of very, very impactful in my go-to-market strategies when I am building products or projects or ideas, or thereafter going and working on anything else. And, you know, I do want to kind of add on to your previous question as well. And I think one thing that I'd like to add is that, as you know, on the other end, which is the mentor itself, the first and foremost, I think one thing that's extremely important is to kind of establish trust with the mentee itself. And that could take one meeting, that could take two meetings, and that could perhaps never happen. And that's totally okay. And I think that's extremely important to kind of highlight out there. And be open about that piece that, hey, let's kind of take time and understand each other and what outcomes are going to come out of this and what our goals are. And are we really aligned on that piece? But really, I would say, I think my biggest experience is to actually be a mentor and learn from the mentees, and of course kind of helping and guiding them from the experience that I've picked up along the way. But that's what I'd like to add. Like, don't just be a mentor, but also kind of be a don't just be a mentee, but also be a mentor, because every experience, it doesn't matter which level you're at. It could be early career, mid career, or advanced, or an executive level. Everybody has something to share.
Great. Emily, anything to add there?
I thought a lot about my very first formal mentor relationship that I had. I was at a point in my career where I was trying to decide if I wanted to stay as a lead individual contributor or transition into management. And I was paired with a wonderful leader at my organization who helped take me behind the curtain and let me ask questions, let me shadow, and really it was extremely beneficial. But there was things that I saw from that experience that I didn't like. For example, she had a habit where she had a notebook on her employees and she would write down if they had a long lunch and how long it was, or if they came back from that lunch with shopping bags. And I asked her why she did that. And she said that she would be better prepared when they had conversations about, oh, they're working too late, or I'm not paid enough for this. And she'd be like, nah, you can go to lunch and you can spend time shopping. And I saw that, and it was just so clear to me how much she didn't trust them and how much they knew she didn't trust them, and how that almost perpetuated that cycle to continue. And for me, that very much crystallized for me the importance of trust in those relationships, and probably pushed me even more into my decision to go into leadership because I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the person who would give that trust and build those relationships in return. But it also kind of opened the door for me about mentorships. I think sometimes we expect our mentors to be perfect because they're successful, they've got great reputations, they're charismatic. But just like us, no one's perfect. And I don't think we should expect to learn everything from them. That's why you have that focused question, because we need to find the right person that we can learn our focus from. And it also would take away that idea of learning from others or learning ourselves if we're trying to learn everything from this one person. So it really was a powerful example of how you can learn and grow from your non-examples when you see people who maybe aren't living out what you want to see.
And I think that's true for sort of any of our relationships, right? It's advice I've given to my own children who are young adults now, where they had a coach or a teacher or someone who did things who they really didn't like. It's giving them so now you know how not to be, right? Now you know the things that didn't inspire you. If you're in the position of being the leader, it's not going to inspire others either, right? So take those lessons from it, both the good and the bad. You may see the way someone works and like it and adopt it for yourself. You can also adopt it to your style. If you simply try to adapt someone else's style, but it's not authentic to you, it will come across inauthentic. So I think that that's a really important point that you made on that, Emily. So, all right, turning to our next really practical question. Molly B, I'm going to go back to you. So if someone's looking for a mentor, what do they do? What are their next steps?
What a great question. If someone is looking for a mentor, I think the first thing you need to think about is it puts a lot of pressure to be like, I need to find my one mentor. This is the person I will go to. I really loved what Amanda said. You're building a bench. I think an ideal situation, you have about 4 mentors, and some of them are inside your organization. Some are external, some are in your field, some are not. Some may be older than you, some might also be younger than you. And you're building sort of a team of people around you that can support you. So some places you can go to sort of start building this team. I see number 1 is an old boss that you had. Internship back in high school, maybe even a professor in college, someone that used to sort of be responsible for your development. reach out to them, send them an email, give, a paragraph explaining that however they mentored you back then was impactful because of XYZ. And now you have a question that you think that they're a person that they could really help you with the answer. Ask the question, make it short, unique, something you can't find on Google, and see how they respond. If they write you back 3 paragraphs and say, let's hop on a Zoom and go deeper on this, this person's looking for a mentee in their life. If they write you back with something short, that's fine. They can be added to your bench. I think of mentors like friendships. You have some friendships where you are their best friend, they're your best friend, it's perfectly aligned. But we've all invited people to our birthday party, to our wedding, and maybe they didn't invite us to theirs, or we've been bridesmaids in someone else's wedding and we didn't have them in ours. It's okay if it's not always exactly who you would consider a mentor, you think that they consider you a mentee. And I think that that's important to know. Last point on this, I don't think you need to use the word mentor when you're talking to them the first couple of times. I think the first time you use the word mentor is when you're introducing them to someone else. Oh, hey, this is Susan. She's my mentor. Versus, Susan, will you be my mentor? That word comes with a lot of different meanings. Some people don't have time for it. Build a relationship, ask them for advice, maybe an email, maybe Zoom, maybe real life eventually, and then they will become your mentor over time.
Molly M., given that you do this as part of your profession, what would you say to people looking for a mentor and how to go about that?
Yeah, so +1 to everything that Molly B just said. I think, taking an audit of your relationships that you currently have to see if anyone is there that could, you could ask that question to is great. But I also say being connected to, an organization like my wonderful organization, Chicago Innovation, that has a formal mentoring program is a great way to start, especially if you want to be part of a larger community than just that one-on-one mentoring pair. It's a great way to get plugged into a larger community and, look for, it could be industry based or larger than that, something that you're passionate about, that you can meet other people who are passionate about, because you'll be connected to not just your mentor or mentee in that, but the whole community of people who could later on serve in that role for you as well.
Namisha, what would you add?
I think I'll completely agree with both Molly's, what they've just mentioned. And I'll just say that, it doesn't always have to be a formal relationship. It could be your friend. It could be, your spouse. It could be anybody. So definitely kind of look into your core group, because some of the best mentors I really have, and some of the people who push me are my closest friends back from probably elementary school. It's incredible to see that kind of support structure. They are your hype club, right? And I think, in addition to what Molly M just mentioned, I think there are a bunch of other communities and resources out there, and some of them like Girls Who Code, Barclays Rise, Products by Women, also, which is making like mentorship really accessible. And I think it's about kind of finding what's working for you, which industry, what your objective is, and what outcome you're really looking for. And I think it's not necessary that you have to find one organization. You can be working with mentors in different places in different parts of your life. To be honest, like I have a mentor I really look up to some moms, and I'm like, oh my God, she's my mommy mentor, and this is how I want to be. And that's the person I want to be for my fitness goals. Like, you can have different people that you look up to. So it doesn't have to be just that one person.
I would also add, there are a lot of great organizations out there that do mentoring for young people. Mm-hmm. There's Step Up Women's Network is one that I've been involved with. There are a lot of others who are trying to mentor, students, particularly students in under-resourced areas where there may not be as many advisory services at their schools, et cetera. It's a great way to get that sort of first experience providing some mentorship, because we're all at this point in our careers pretty, we're all versed in what it takes to pursue your education and what those goals can be and how to think about college and things. It's a really great place to start that may give people perspective as well. So it's one that I would add, and also on the sort of philanthropic side, because it's really rewarding to do as well. So next there are a couple live questions that have come in the chat or in the Q&A. I'm going to pose a few of those, and then I think we'll open it up a little more. But starting with Molly Beck, what would you say or send to people at the edge of your network? I think people are just impressed and really, that you're so brave was one of the comments. So how does that conversation even start? How did you go about reaching out to people on a bit of some of them sounded like maybe a cold call, and over time, maybe they were more of on the edge of your network?
What a great question. So the first thing is it will be scary the first time you send an email to someone in your network that you haven't talked to in a while, whether you want them to be your mentor, you want them to pass along your resume, you want to grab coffee with them, you want them to be your mommy mentor. The first time you send an email to someone you don't know well, it will be scary. You will read it 4 times, your hands will be sweating, but you'll hit send. But the key to the whole thing is you have to do it every day. The reason that you do it every day is you're just developing a bad memory. We have all sent an email to our neighbors, moms, best friend, asking for something, not gotten a response, and then felt really sad. Like, no one wants to talk to me. I'm not that important. Why am I even bothering trying to build this network? But if you send an email to your neighbor's mom's best friend, and then the next day it's your neighbor's best friend's mom's cousin, and you do get a response, and then the day after that it's your old boss, and then it's a professor, and then it's someone you used to intern with, by the end of the week, you have 3 responses. You don't remember the people that didn't respond. So the first key to reaching out every day is to do the everyday part. It will become less scary over time. In terms of what to say, any email that you send, whether someone you know really well or someone you want to know well, hello, who you say hi to their name, you use the most formal version of their name, what they usually use on LinkedIn. If they're using doctor, or if they're using a formal first name versus a nickname, say hi to the most formal version of your name the first time you reach out to them. Introduce yourself in 1 sentence, only say what's most relevant to the reach out. You're not going to say all these other things if it's not really relevant to why you're reaching out. 1 sentence, then do a gift, something that's just like, hey, I heard you on this podcast. I read this book. This person we have in common is always just saying the nicest things about you. Something that will, who doesn't want to get a little joy in their inbox? And then you have the question. The question is short. You say it in 1 sentence. You use the word one, O-N-E. Do you have 1 tip? Do you have 1 piece of advice? Do you have 1 book I should read? The reason you say 1 is it's easy for them to respond, and they almost certainly will give you more than 1. And then you say, thanks so much. And that's it. The whole email should be short enough that if you had to, you could read it over a voicemail.
That's great. Given your reference to a book, we did have a question as to any books or materials that could be useful to someone who's a soon-to-be mentor. I'll ask Namisha first, anything you would say before I open it up to others?
Yeah, I think I briefly just mentioned, you can most definitely look at Products by Women. We have our skill-based mentorship, and we are accepting mentors, and across the board, early, mid-career, advanced. There's also Barclays Rise, which often kind of takes mentors. There's Girls Who Code, books and resources. I think there are plenty, but perhaps let me think about some and put them down in chat for you. But I think some of the best resources you would find within these communities, definitely check them out.
Great. Molly B.
Yeah, I have some book recommendations around networking and mentoring. I have 3 recommendations, all by women authors, Women's History Month. The first one is called The Lost Art of Connecting. It's by Susan McPherson. It just came out this week. It's all about how to make connections in real life. And she talks a lot about what Namisha has been saying, like build a community and then have people around yourself. So that's called The Lost Art of Connecting. The next one is called Hiding in the Bathroom. It's how to network when you're an introvert and how to have those type of tough conversations when you do identify as an introvert. And the last one is called Reach Out, and it's by me. And it's how to send emails to people that you don't know.
That's great. So for those of you who were asking how she went about that, there's a whole book. You can look at it. Emily, I'm going to ask you one of the questions posed. Have you ever felt hesitant or not qualified to be a mentor?
Hesitant, yes. And I think in those situations, they've been sort of the opposite situation that Molly had been describing, where I get an email in my inbox and it says, "Hi, Emily. My developmental goal says I should have a mentor this year. Will you be my mentor?" And when I get that email, of course, I'm honored and touched that that person thought of me and is interested in partnering with me. But there's just so much to unpack from that. What are you trying to accomplish? You know, how do you think I can help you? What are your goals? What is your timeline? There's just so much to unpack there that I think breeds that little bit of hesitation. So typically what I would do in that situation is, again, follow up with a thank you. Thank you so much for thinking of me. You know, I heard this great news about you. I'm so glad you're doing well. But then start to ask, what are you trying to work towards in your mentorship? Or what are your expectations around mentorship? Essentially, it almost becomes a mini mentoring session about mentoring to help sort of set some of those best practices and set some of those engagement ideas so that whether or not I do end up working with this person, they'll be more successful in reaching out to mentors in the future.
Thank you, Emily. Molly M., what are your opinions or recommendations for reaching out to potential mentors via email, which we've already talked about a little of how to do it, but your thoughts on that versus over social media platforms like LinkedIn?
I think it's totally acceptable. I want to hear Molly B's thoughts on this as well, but sometimes we don't have that email address. The only way we're connected is through LinkedIn. So I think, you know, I am one, and this is a practice I've developed more recently. Anyone who I have a meeting with, whether I'm talking a lot or I'm just participating, I add them on LinkedIn. I try to add in a note, you know, starting that conversation. So similar to what Molly B said earlier, don't go in, you know, hot with like, I want you to be my mentor. Start that relationship, you know, cultivate it, and then you can, you know, formalize it later on.
Yeah, Molly M., I'll add that I just recently started doing that, where I'll be on a panel or I'll just be at a meeting or a conference and I'll start adding the people. It's something I didn't do and I don't know why, but it's a natural way to just say, you know, we ever attended at this or we sat on this panel, and you'll get that acceptance. So it's great advice. Molly B., anything you would add on that?
Absolutely love LinkedIn. When you connect with someone, always make sure you use the note to remind them how you know them. Also saw a question in chat, should you accept LinkedIn requests? I think if you recognize their name or they put a note, I think it's okay. If it's a total stranger and they didn't put a note, I don't think you need to feel any sort of pressure whatsoever to accept from a stranger that hasn't even bothered to introduce themselves or say why they want to connect.
Great. Namisha, I'd like to ask you, what does the theme of career ownership mean to you? Because we talked about building your bench and all of this is about owning your career. What does that mean from your perspective?
You know, for me, I really look at, you know, kind of owning and building your own opportunities, right? Like, I mean, it means that when you yourself don't see any sort of opportunities, kind of going out there and making it happen, finding a way to make it happen, and kind of making sure that you're, whether it could be mentorship, like kind of connecting with the right people, identifying those opportunities. Because here's the thing, if you kind of meet with more people, it also means you're opening up more opportunities for yourself. And perhaps that could lead to creating opportunities for yourself in turn. So for me, I think that's exactly what I mean. I think it means reach out to more people. A lot of what both the Mollys have mentioned and what Emily also kind of alluded to, which is go out there, put yourself out there. It doesn't really matter if you kind of get a lot of rejections, just keep going. Because, you know, ultimately it's going to lead to some sort of conversion. It is going to get you to a better place. Yeah.
Anybody care to expand on that? It's a meaty question of what does career ownership mean? Molly M.
Yeah. So I love everything Namisha just said. I think something that my current boss, Tom Kazmarski, has taught me is to own your expertise. So when I think about owning my career, I think about owning my expertise. What am I knowledgeable in, and being confident in that? I think too often as women, we downplay ourselves. You know, we have that imposter syndrome. So coming into how do I think about owning my career? I own that I am meant to be where I am. I'm meant to be, whatever doors open for me, they were open for a reason. And so I own my expertise. You know, it took me a while to be comfortable speaking on panels because I was like, is this my space? But after owning my expertise, owning my career, and owning my path, that it's gotten to me here for a reason, I think it makes it more natural and easier. So that's how I think about it, is like owning that expertise, because your career, it can come and go, but your expertise is always with you.
Yeah, that's great, Molly. And I think we could have an entire additional panel on imposter syndrome.
Oh, yes.
We'll put that on our list for one of our
Mhm.
next ones. Anyone else want to jump in on the owning your career?
I'd love to, Karen.
Emily, go ahead.
So for me, understanding career ownership, I feel like I first had to come to terms with what it meant to be passive in my career. For example, when I was in grad school, one of my professors had a copy of my resume and applied to several jobs on my behalf, unbeknownst to me, one of which I ended up taking. In the company that I was in for about 9 years, I was doing very well of my own accord, but I was also in essentially a succession chain where my boss was also moving through the organization. He would get a promotion, I would take his role. He would get a promotion, I would take his role. And it got to the point where I almost started thinking about my career in terms of his. What could he do next so that I could do something? And when I had that realization about how passive I was being and that I was letting my career happen to me and following upward versus asking questions about what I wanted to do or making decisions that were my choices influenced by my wants and needs versus a professor or a family member or a company or a boss. That's when I think when you actively decide to be the main actor in your career, that's when it's ownership versus not.
And Karen, I just like to add like one more thing. I think one thing that kind of propelled me to even think about starting products by women is because I I think I briefly mentioned it, but every one of us has been there when we felt like we were worthy of getting the next promotion, or we were worthy of get advancing in our career. And I felt, and when you don't get that, you often feel like, okay, so what's next for me? And so perhaps, I think one thing that worked for me personally is that when I didn't get that opportunity, or when I felt like things are not working out my way, I went out and I started doing something about it. And I think it's important for everybody to kind of take matters into their own hands and see what they can do outside of what's served to them, because those are the cards you have, right? And Emily, I actually articulated it very beautifully, which is, kind of sitting down and saying, what do I have? Where am I at? Where do I want to be? And how can I get there? So, yeah.
Right. Molly B, I would love to hear your thoughts on the ownership of career before we do our final and wrap this up.
When I think about ownership of career, I think about the difference between renting something and owning it. So right now, the shirt that I'm wearing is Rent the Runway. I don't own it. I'm going to send it back in 4 days. That means I spill coffee on it. I get a stain on it. I don't really care. It's leaving my life in 4 days. The pants I'm wearing, I own. That means I'm thinking, how am I going to wash them? What else could I wear them with? What do they look good with? I think about them differently when you rent something versus owning it. And I think we all need to step into our careers. We're not renting these jobs. We're not renting this career. We're not renting this life. We own it, which means we need to be thinking about, what are we doing today that will make us happy and proud that this is what we own tomorrow, a month from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are we doing so that future generations will be like, wow, my grandma really did something that changed the course of my life? It's about owning something versus renting it, and we are owning our lives.
What a great analogy, Molly, and thank you for sharing that. To our panelists, I really, really appreciate your time and your insight on this. It's great for our community within and outside of Relativity. I know we have a lot of people both in and outside of the organization, extended friends and others on this, who I know got a lot of value from everything you had to say today. I hope we will all stay in touch, expand those networks and build those relationships. And I will turn it now over to Amanda.
Thank you so much, Karen. And thank you to everyone for that remarkable panel. As we wrap up here today, I want to express my gratitude. I have chills from those last few comments, and I'm so excited to have heard from all of the amazing panelists today. We've shared a little bit more about A, your amazing word cloud. So if those words look familiar, it's because you're the author of them. And B, an upcoming event on April 22nd that we're throwing. So thank you so much for joining today's panel. Karen, thank you so much for being a remarkable moderator and panelists. I'm so grateful to have you as part of today's presentation. Take care, everybody. Thank you again and have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.